Hi, and welcome to That Time on That Trip, where we connect through lessons learned in the great outdoors. My name is Maddie, and our guest today is Robin. Hi, Robin. Thanks for coming on today.
Hi, Maddie. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to have you. The story we're about to hear starts with you retiring. What industry were you in? What are you retiring from?
I was in the medical field, so I was a registered nurse, and I worked at the bedside for 30 years in burn intensive care. And then the last 25 years, I was a project manager in healthcare IT. So implementing EMRs in hospitals. But after all that, I said, I've had it. So I took early retirement.
Yeah, that sounds so stressful. Um, You said you retired right before COVID, so that's kind of I'm
July.
sure that would be even more hectic during that. So then to kind of I guess people can tell from the title, but this story is about the Santiago or the Camino de Santiago. If anyone doesn't know, that's a network of trails, mostly in Spain. Not only trails, but it's a pilgrimage. People hike it to just connect with their spirituality. Well, you would know more than I would. How would you describe the Camino?
I think people do it for different reasons. Some of them do it for religious reasons, since it's more of a Catholic church sponsored kind of thing. But you don't have to be Catholic to walk it. Then some people do it for spirituality and just meeting other people because it is very spiritual. And then some people do it just to have the adventure or to prove that they could do it. So I think there's multiple reasons. And I got asked that all the time when I was walking, especially at the beginning. Everybody wanted to know, why are you doing it? How did you get here? So that's a common question you get.
I know in the story you said that YouTube was showing you a lot of videos from the Camino, and that's what kind of hooked you. Can you put your finger on exactly what hooked you? What made you want to do it?
I kept watching these Camino videos and I thought,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't look, they're just out walking. I didn't realize it was more difficult than the video showed, but I just wanted some kind of adventure. And because I'd watched you do the AT and I'd
Oh,
watched
thank you.
other people do the PCT and all, not that I could ever do those, but I thought it would be so, I've never been able to do any kind of like backpack thing. And I thought this would be a way I could do it, but I wouldn't be totally by myself because there'd be other people and I wouldn't have to carry a tent, because we do sleep in a bed. So I thought that started in my mind that maybe I could do it. And so I kept watching these videos since we couldn't go anywhere. And I decided that's what I wanted to do to celebrate retiring, turning 65, which happened during all that mess. And I picked this past fall. That was my date. I'm going to go because I kept putting it off. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I got there. And I did it this past fall.
Oh, that's so cool. Um, I know you said you didn't hike a lot in the U.S. What region do you live in?
I live in Atlanta. I live in the South. And in the summer it's too darn hot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then and I walk dogs all day, so that's my post-retirement job. So then after I've walked all day in the heat, I don't want to have to go out and you know
Hike some more,
hike some
walk
more in
some
the
more.
heat.
Yeah. Well, then you started walking, didn't you?
I did.
On
I
the
thought I'll just have to wing it, and because at least I walk every day anyway, so it's not like I just went from the couch.
Yeah.
So that maybe helped. So I thought, well, I'll just have to do the best I can. So the first 4 days were pretty tough, and I took it pretty slow. I didn't try to keep up with other people because I've thought, no, they'll just have to go ahead. I can only walk so fast. I got stronger as I went along, but I just,
Mhm.
took a slow and steady pace, and I made it to the end without injury. So I think I was thankful for that.
Well, thank goodness.
Thank goodness. I hadn't walked much in the past, but I didn't let that hold me back when I did the Camino de Santiago on the Frances. In July 2019, I opted for early retirement from the corporate world at the age of 64. My post retirement job was pet sitting and dog walking, which was keeping me active and busy, walking 6 to 8 miles per day. I was going to turn 65 in April of 2020 and wanted to plan a celebration trip for a milestone birthday and retiring. However, the pandemic happened in 2020 and the world shut down. So I started watching hiking videos on YouTube to pass the time. YouTube started sending me videos of the Camino Frances. I had never heard of the Camino before, but quickly became hooked on learning as much as I could about the Camino. After watching numerous videos and reading a few books, I was hooked and decided I could do this too. Even though I'd never hiked a day in my life or carried a pack, I had not even ever gone on a day hike. The farthest I had hiked was maybe 1 to 2 miles to see a waterfall. The Camino would be my chance to go on a long walk and enjoy nature. All I had to do was walk the path, basically bed to bed, to the next village or the next urban city. I started telling friends and clients my plan to walk across Spain. That way, if I told people in advance, I wouldn't back out. The Camino de Santiago is also known as the Way of St. James. St. James was an apostle of Jesus Christ, and his remains are supposedly entombed at the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela, which is the endpoint for the Camino Frances. Camino in Spanish translates to trail, path, or journey. The Camino is considered a pilgrimage and sanctioned by the Catholic Church. There are multiple Camino routes to choose from. I chose the Frances as it has the most infrastructure for pilgrims. The scallop shell is attached to the pilgrim's pack and symbolizes that you are a pilgrim walking the Camino. Route markers for the path include the scallop shell, as well as yellow arrows to guide you along the way. I decided to embark on my journey in the fall of 2024. In June, I made my flight reservations to Paris, so I couldn't back out now. I was committed. My original plan was to train by walking 10 miles a day on the weekends with a full pack. However, due to heat and humidity in Atlanta during the summertime, that did not happen prior to leaving for my journey. I did take a few short walks with an empty pack and learned how to use hiking poles before I set out for France. On September 19th, I started my journey on an overnight flight to Paris. Upon arrival in Paris, I went in search of the train station, which would take me to Bordeaux for the night. I got a good night's sleep and was back at the train station the next morning to continue to Bayonne and finally a bus to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, France, where the Frances begins at the base of the Pyrenees on the French side. Upon arrival in St. John, I went to the pilgrim's office to register, obtain my scallop shell and my pilgrim's credential. You were required to obtain a stamp each day in your credential to validate you walked the entire path, and 2 stamps per day the last 100 kilometers to receive your Compostela certificate upon reaching Santiago. I then checked into my gîte, eager to begin walking and meet other pilgrims. This is where I met Joe, who became my walking buddy for many, many miles. The Frances is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is the body, which is Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Burgos, where your body is challenged, and my body was definitely challenged during that time. The second section is the mind, which is Burgos to Astorga, or the Meseta section, which is like the plains section, where your mind is opened. The third section is for the soul, which is Astorga to Santiago, where your soul is lifted. On September 21st, I began my journey with a light rain and a full pack. The walk out of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port was straight uphill, and I hadn't even reached the Pyrenees section yet. The first 4 days were the most difficult of the entire journey for me, Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Pamplona. I kept going at a slow and steady pace till I reached a decision point. Take the Napoleon or the Val Carlos route. The Napoleon route, or the high route, goes up and over the Pyrenees, where the Val Carlos route, or the lower route, which is the mandatory route November 1st to April 1st, when the Napoleon route is closed due to winter weather. I chose the Napoleon route and my fitness tracker logged that I had walked 58 flights of stairs that first day. I decided to break up the walk over the Pyrenees into 2 days. I spent the night at Refuge Borda, where I met Marianne, who became a dear friend. I can still hear the bells ringing around the sheep and cows' necks which are grazing on the side of the mountains as you walk the path. The Pyrenees were rolling green mountains with little vegetation except the grass. The day I crossed was foggy, so my view of the mountains was limited. On day 2, I left Borda to continue to Roncesvalles, where I would stay the night in an old converted monastery in a mixed dorm. Roncesvalles holds up to 200 and something pilgrims, and I was on a floor with 50 pilgrims in bunk beds. I didn't get much sleep that night with the array of snoring, but I felt ready to tackle the walk to Zubiri the next day, even though I was not well rested. From Zubiri, my next destination was Pamplona, where I hobbled into town on day 4 with very sore calf muscles and took a much-needed rest day on day 5. After a day of rest, I felt energized and ready to hit the trail again, with my next rest day scheduled for Burgos. I quickly started to develop a daily routine of waking up in my bunk between 6:30 and 7 a.m., packing up, having breakfast if offered by the albergue, and out the door by 8 a.m. at the latest. Departure time for albergues were usually 8 a.m. Only exceptions were if you stayed in a private hotel or a pension. Usually around 10 a.m., I would stop at the next village that had a cafe open and have a second breakfast, which typically consisted of café con leche, which is espresso and steamed milk, a flaky pastry filled with dark chocolate, which was my favorite, that's called a napolitano, or a tortilla, which in Spain is eggs and a potato pie, like a thick slice of quiche. I would take a lunch break around 1 and eat snacks out of my pack. I usually did not have time to stop for lunch at a cafe or wasn't near a village with a cafe that was open. During the first section of the Frances, I would usually get to my albergue for the night around 4:30 to 5. I would shower, do laundry if I needed to, and have dinner around 7. By 9, I was in bed for the night. Bars, cafes, and markets closed for siesta every day from 2 p.m. to around 6 or 7. Restaurants typically open for dinner around 8 or 9 p.m. The albergues lock the doors for the night at 10 p.m., so you need to be in by then or you can't get in for the night. You'll be sleeping out on a bench. The next 7 days were uneventful until the morning I left Najera. It had rained heavily the afternoon before and throughout the night. I started out that morning with my friend Sonia from northern England, who had met a few villages back. After walking about 30 minutes, the trail turned to pure mud. In trying to get around the mud, I misjudged the depth, and my right leg sunk into the mud up to my knee. And then the rest of my right side fell to the ground into the thick mud. It was like quicksand. I couldn't get back up. Sonia had turned around to see if I was behind her and saw me on the ground covered in mud. She hurriedly came to my aid, and between the two of us, I eventually got back up on my feet. Sonia gave me an extra shirt she had on to wipe the mud off and said, "We will hose you off in the next village," which ended up being 5.6-kilometer walk away. Santo Domingo was my destination for the night, and upon arrival I showered and then headed for the nearest laundromat. At least I survived the fall without injury. The cathedral in Santo Domingo is known for the chicken that resides in the west transept of the cathedral. Legend has it that a miracle occurred in the town called the Hanged Innocent. There was a German family of pilgrims on their way to Santiago who stopped in Santo Domingo to rest for the night at an inn. The son was not interested in the advances of the innkeeper's daughter, so she placed a piece of silver from the church in the son's bag and called the police that a theft had occurred. The son was charged with theft and left to hang in the town square. These were medieval times, by the way. His parents, although in mourning, continued on their pilgrimage to Santiago. On the parents' return home, they stopped back in Santo Domingo to visit the body of their son and found him alive and well, even though he was still hanging. His parents said a miracle had happened, even though no one in the town believed a miracle had occurred. The parents went to the police to report he was still alive. The policeman said the son was no more alive than the chicken he was roasting. At this point, the miracle continues as the roasted chicken began clucking and squawking. The town never forgot the miracle, and to this day, descendants of the roasted chicken are kept alive and well in a coop in the cathedral. And yes, I did see the chicken alive in the cathedral in his coop. Not having access to the news, I did not know that Hurricane Kirk had made its way to Portugal, which resulted in heavy rain and wind over northern Spain. I left Atapuerca in the morning with a steady rain and fog. I reached the top of a hill and looked to my left, and there was a fellow pilgrim I had met the night before at the hostel, Attila, who was from Croatia. He said he would walk with me to Burgos that day to ensure I got there safely, since the weather was not looking good. Attila ended up being my guardian angel that day. I don't think I would have made it to Burgos without him by my side. It took us 8.5 hours to walk to Burgos, with rain and wind that felt like knives cutting into our faces. We arrived in Burgos safe and soaked to the bone, but my body was stronger now, and I had completed the first section of the Frances, ready to begin the Meseta section after a day of rest in Burgos. Section 1, from St. John Pied-de-Port to Burgos, was approximately 284 kilometers and took me 18 days. My body had definitely been challenged, but my legs were so much stronger than when I started. After a rest day in Burgos, I was ready to start the Meseta section, which is like the plains, similar to Kansas. However, Hurricane Kirk had other plans, and he decided to hang around northern Spain a bit longer, with rain and winds up to 60 miles per hour. Since the Meseta is relatively flat with minimal trees, you're basically out in the open with fields on either side of you with no protection. Warning messages were posted on Facebook and the news advising pilgrims not to walk that day due to the winds. With that warning, I took a taxi to the next village that I had planned to walk to, so I would at least be moving ahead. Since I arrived around noon, I used the afternoon to try to plan out the next section. I had a minor panic attack when I counted the days I had left to walk and the distance left to travel, and felt like I didn't have enough days to make it to Santiago to catch my flight back to the States if I kept the same pace that I had been going, which was about 15 to 20 kilometers a day. I reached out to a fellow pilgrim, John, who had met in Uterga, a village outside of Pamplona. John had previously walked 18 Caminos, and he had been a fantastic resource for me. He offered to lay out a plan for me with daily distances of 20 to 25 kilometers so that I could reach Santiago by October 30th. If it hadn't been for John's help, I don't think I would have made it to Santiago in time. I will always be grateful to John for his support to the finish line. It would mean I would have to skip part of the Meseta, but I was okay with that. I walked 123 kilometers of the Meseta to Sahagún in 7 days. In Sahagún, I stayed at a monastery that had been converted into a pilgrim's albergue. The priest met me at the door with a cup of tea and a basket of sweets to choose from. At this albergue, they have a communal meal, but each pilgrim needs to bring something to offer as part of the meal. I quickly walked to the market so I could add something to the meal, and the staff provided vegetable soup. It was a wonderful experience, everyone coming together to share a meal. There were about 30 pilgrims and the priest at this meal. From Sahagún, I took a train to Lyon to continue my journey. Lyon was a beautiful city. I would have liked to have spent an extra day there. The cathedral was well worth the visit, so beautiful inside with all the stained glass windows. The cathedral is surrounded by a plaza that is dotted with bars and cafes, with patrons dining al fresco. Upon leaving Lyon, I walked to Astorga, which ends the second section, which took me 5 days to walk 48.8 kilometers. I was able to cover longer distances now in a shorter amount of time. The Meseta, or plains region of Spain, is relatively flat with a lot of road walking. The sunrises were gorgeous as the sky was unobstructed by urban areas, just sky and fields of sunflowers. It was a beautiful section to walk, which gave you lots of time to think. I used the time on the meseta to reflect, slow down, and enjoy nature. The final section takes you back into Galicia and the mountains. Galicia is also known for being a very wet section with lots of rain. The final section is Astorga to Santiago. Due to time constraints, I took a bus from Astorga to Ponferrada and then walked the remaining 250 kilometers to Santiago, which took me 11 days. A tradition of the Frances is to bring a stone or small rock from home to leave at the base of Cruz de Ferro, the Iron Cross. The stone that you leave signifies the burdens you are carrying, and now you are leaving those burdens at the base of the Iron Cross. Unfortunately, my bus ride had me bypass the Iron Cross, so I was still carrying my stone around with me, and I needed to find a spot to leave my stone. When I arrived in Osabrario, I knew I had found the home for my stone. This was a major climb getting to the town, but once there it was so magical. Bagpipes were playing, and all the buildings looked like they had been built in medieval times. I found a spot for my stone near the church and left my burdens there in Osabrario. Leaving Villafranca del Bierzo led to my next adventure. Upon leaving the village, you have a choice to make. You can take the road route or the scenic route. I was tired of road walking, so I decided I would take the scenic route. Little did I know that at the time, this alternate is one of the most difficult on the Frances, and only about 5% of pilgrims choose it. Luckily, I met a Canadian couple, John and Michelle, who were wanting to walk the alternate, so we banded together and set off. The route starts with 2 to 3 kilometer incline straight up a mountain, though it seemed like a 10-kilometer uphill walk at the time. 4.5 hours and 12 kilometers later, we made it to the next town. This ended up being one of my hardest days of walking, but the views were so worth it. I was now getting to the end of my journey, and I was feeling sad that my walk would soon come to an end. The walk into the plaza of the cathedral in Santiago was magical. I can still hear the bagpipes to this day as I walk through the arch to the plaza. It's hard to put into words the emotions I felt that I finally made it to Santiago. Part of me was glad to be finished, and the other part of me wanted to continue walking. This final section was for the soul, and I felt renewed and refreshed upon reaching Santiago. It was a beautiful day when I walked into the plaza, full sun. I will always remember that feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction for completing the journey. I happened to be in Santiago for All Saints' Day, which is a day to remember loved ones in heaven. I decided to attend the noon Pilgrim's Mass. I was so glad I did, since it was a special day in the Catholic Church. I was able to see the Botafumerio swing across the congregation. The Botafumerio weighs 53 kilograms and measures 1.5 meters, and may also be the largest censer in the world. By using a system of ropes and pulleys, it is swung from the central cupola of the cathedral towards the aisles along the side. It takes 8 men, known as tirabularios, to move it. It is suspended to a height of about 20 meters, can reach speeds up to 68 kilometers an hour. The Botafumerio only swings for special dates or if a sizable donation is made. The incense from the censer began in medieval times to counteract the odor of the pilgrims who had not bathed or had clean clothes. It is said that it could take pilgrims in the medieval times a year or longer to walk to Santiago, as they started from their homes. The connections with fellow pilgrims from around the world are my fondest memories. If I had not stayed in albergues in mixed dorms with bunk beds, I would not have met as many pilgrims as I did. Some I walked with for half a day, and some I walked with for many days. Other days I walked alone. The communal meals were also a great way to meet other pilgrims. I'm glad I did as many communal meals as I did. The accomplishment of walking 500 miles at the age of 69 was major for me. I encourage anyone who thinks they can't do it, just know you can do it. If I can do it, anyone can. It was a wonderful experience that I will cherish forever, especially all the people I met along the way and keep in touch with to this day. Remember, all you must do is put one foot in front of the other. In fact, I'm planning to go back in the fall of 2025 with a fellow pilgrim, Mary Ann. Once you have walked one Camino, you will feel the call to go back again.
So you're going back in 2025, huh?
I am. I'm going back next fall. One of the other pilgrims I'd met, Marianne, at the beginning this year, she got really sick and couldn't make it. So she had to end her trip and go home on day 4 in Pamplona. So she never got to really do it. She never got to walk the Camino, and she really wanted to do it. So she called me like 2 or 3 weeks ago and said she was going to do it. She was going to go back. Did I want to go with her? And I said, I'll go with you because we're only going to do the last half.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of flew through the last half when I did mine because I was on a time crunch. So I thought, okay, that gave me a good chance to go back, start in Lyon, do the last half and take my time more, and because I missed some things. So I'm looking forward to going back. And I think that's the thing. Everybody that I talked to that had done multiples when I was over there said, once you do one, you want to come back and either do the same route or a different route because there's multiple routes.
Oh, that's so cool. So 2025 is coming up. By the
Yeah,
time I
yeah.
post this, it'll probably be the day after Christmas or Christmas Day. So it's just right around the corner. You don't have your tickets booked already, do you? I guess if you're going in the
No,
fall, you're probably going to wait on
we
that.
haven't gotten that far yet, but yeah.
Um, well, that's awesome. Can you, this might be a hard question, but can you put your finger on what made you want to go back? Was it the sense of accomplishment, the people, the time to think you have out there, or was it just a combination of everything?
Part of it was the people, but the other part was that I needed to go back and finish. I didn't feel like I really got to finish because I had to race through the last half, and I feel like there's something I didn't get to finish. I didn't get to go to. I had to skip one section because of time. So this time I'll get to go walk that section. So I feel like I'll be able to actually finish it because I'll have walked that section that I missed due to time.
Oh, good. That's going to be awesome, I'm
I
sure.
know, I can't wait.
One of the parts I really liked about your story is when you were telling your dog walking clients what you were going to do, and that kind of would hold you to it. Um, how did that feel being able to come back afterwards and be like, mission accomplished, y'all? Like, how did they react?
I know, I was so excited. It was such a feeling of empowerment and that I did it, because they were all afraid. Some of them were afraid for me to go by myself because I went by myself. I'm like, I'm not going to be totally alone. There are people over there. I'm not in a third world country. But it was just the sense that when I got back, I did it. It was just, I don't know, it's how to explain that. You just did something. Can do more than you think you can, I think, or your body can.
Yeah, so true. Do you have any advice for older folks or just anyone that wants to do something and thinks maybe I can't do this, has some doubts or something holding them back from their goals?
My best advice would be to like train before you go over there. Don't do like I did and not build up your walking ahead of time, and learn how to use poles because I'd never used hiking poles before. So I watched some YouTube videos so I could figure out how to do that, but practice using the poles and walking with a pack. And then you just have to be in the mindset to be open to meet other people. And if you go by yourself, I think it's a good thing because then you're forced to like talk to other people because you're alone. So that helped me meet other people, and some of those people are still friends and we all keep in touch. So you can meet some wonderful people, but it gets you out of your comfort zone, I think, because I'm not an extrovert, so that was hard for me, but I've gotten better at that, having been over there and having to talk to people I don't know.
Yeah, kind of learn that skill through being in a situation to need it, huh?
Correct.
That's so cool. Well, congratulations on finishing your hike, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Just a note to our viewers, I'm going to start posting the podcast, maybe not every single week going forward, but it'll still be coming out. If anyone would like to share their own story, I'll put a link in the video description of the YouTube video. And thank you to everyone that's been watching all the way through episodes, that's been liking, that's been sharing it with people that might like it as well. This is the 5th episode I made, and it's just so much fun to meet people like Robin and like all of our guests. This has just been so cool to connect with people and share these stories. So thank you to everyone that's been on. I hope we can keep going with this podcast for as long as possible. Till next time, hope you get to get outdoors sometime soon.